And who
Flip
inspired you?
things around.
And who inspired you, Jerri?
Me.
Okay, just wanted to make that clear.
Actually,
Oops, we're
one
losing
of the collaborations I've had has been with a musician who I've given a 10-year data set for our research on the Klamath River. So what I've been doing with that is looking at the trends. And so if you look at this one, because, or I guess this one, because you can see them. This is parasite levels. This is temperature, and this is flow.
If you
And what I've done is,
can I interrupt you for a moment? If you put your view on speaker and Jerri keeps speaking, you will get this the biggest way you can do it.
So the white one is the temperature. No, the black one is the temperature. The white one is
on this piece. So what I've done is, this is 10 years of data. I'm doing 1 year for each of these 6x6 squares. And for each of the parameters, parasite levels, temperature, and flow, I've assigned a risk level based on, you know, how it would affect disease. So in this, flow would be a low risk, temperature a high risk, and parasite levels a moderate risk. And then when we look at the actual risk for the year, it was moderate. So if we look at 2009, everything's black. So each year is very different: 2009, 2010, 2011.
what happened in 2009? What happened in 2009?
A whole lot of fish died.
Yeah.
Due to what?
Low water levels, high temperatures, and really high parasite levels.
So I would just say that the flow going up is what's really interesting in that last piece.
Yeah, and I think because of the colors, it's going to be more or less easy to see things. And, you know, I think here we're dealing with shadows or, you know, light, but I like the idea of playing with this data set, and I've been working on it for so many years that that I wanted to try and create really, I think, a companion piece to what Jason's music sonification of the data is.
So would you be exhibiting this with a headphone next to it where the music is playing?
We could do that. Yeah, I have a music clip from one of the years.
So how would that work for an audience? Are we comfortable enough to put headphones on our head that maybe 5 minutes ago have been on somebody else's head? I'm from a generation that would say, well,
I guess what I was thinking is a QR code where somebody could just get their iPhone, or, you know, take their phone and scan in the QR code and listen to it on their phone.
Yep.
That's a good solution.
Yeah,
this is partly what this meeting is for, to find solutions of little stumbling blocks along the way.
I guess I have a question for the rest of you. One, I have no idea what I'm going to call this, except maybe good years. There will be good years and there will be bad years moving ahead. Because that's what, once I get these all laid out, they're all going to be very different. But how much explanation would you want to see with something like this?
I would like a lot of explanation. Because no, I mean, seriously, when I go to a museum and there's nothing to explain to me what the artist tried to do, I lose, you know, the quality of the work, part of the quality of the work. So it would be nice to have the story with the piece of art. My biased opinion.
How all opinions are biased and are fine. That and you're an academic scientist, so you want to know background, and I like that, because the whole idea of art speaks for itself is not true. I don't know who started messing that up. If it was Duchamp or even going further back, the times that we immediately understood what the nativity was about are over. We need more help. And so I urge all artists to think about that. And so how deep would you like that information to go? Should that be structured? Should we say, well, I want to know from each artist what lecture it is based on, or if it's not based on a lecture, but on an ongoing interest in, for instance, bees, as Jessica has, or is it okay to give an impression of,
I think,
you know?
as most of our audience won't know about the lectures,
Right.
that may not be useful information.
Right.
But I
What
think
if you-
having each artist describe their interest would be.
Will the lectures be available for the public to access during the exhibit?
Sure.
Jessica, they're already on our website. So
Yeah, but
the project name is called What Will Nature Do? And actually I'll get a link here. But there's been
So
a series.
Jessica means probably in
No,
the
so-
space during the exhibit.
Oh,
yeah,
I don't think so, because they're long.
maybe
No, they're not long.
right.
They are an hour. And so for people to be able, so it would have to be excerpts or snippets, or, so again, I think references too. My feel is that it would be interesting to see what an artist is willing to share, and what an artist is, for what was important for the artist to make this artwork based on science, or climate science and or change. Because although we ask people to be serious about this and follow at least the first 9 lectures, we did not require that they were based on that, so that Jessica can freely follow her bees.
Yeah. Kate had an interesting comment. She was like, you know, and she was talking about Jerri's piece, saying, you know, like, Jay, you may find new information because you're looking at it in a new way. What elevates it above graphing data? And I think that would be something that would explain what this art piece is.
Oh, absolutely. Because after I started this, I called in one of my researchers and I said, why is this year not doing what it's supposed to have done? You know, why all these risk levels were okay this way, pointing to this, but overall, that's not what happened. So when I started to assign those colors, it did make me think about it.
The piece that I've been working on is right behind me. And I started, each panel is 6 by 12 inches. I'll move it a little closer.
oh yeah.
It's fire. It's about fire, isn't it?
Yeah, so this is, you know, I'm not a scientist, but this is kind of my response, emotional reaction to what it went on mostly last year with the fires and the flooding and so forth. And so I started out with one panel, which was this one over here. And then I go, well, I need another panel. And then before I knew it, I had 4 panels going. And in each panel is a hope. And so even though there's a burnt forest in the background, and but life is coming back. And so, you know, I'm an optimist. And so, so that's in each piece is life coming back. And you were talking about the bees, Jessica, and she's holding on to this boat with the magnolia trees, and the bees are pollinating. And the fish are coming back. That's for Jerry. And the animals are coming back, but there's also death in there too.
Sure.
And there's a skull, and then of course the trees. But the thing I think that really did it for me was the color of the sky and the sun. I couldn't get over that last year. And so that's what I've got in here is the color of the sky and the sun. And then I put a figure in because all my artwork has a female figure in it doing something. Usually silly, but you know, doing something. And so she's up on her house because her house is floating. It's being flooded. And but then, well, I'll explain that later. But she's also got a glass of wine over here, and that's saving her. But you know, I like to tell a story in my work, and that's certainly what this is doing, is telling a story. And I titled this work Alice Waiting for Rescue. And I titled it Alice because she turned out bigger than the house, kind of Alice in Wonderland kind of thing. So that was that. I think that, you know, it's a piece that's a reflection of the weather events of last year, and you know, it sort of accepting the climate change and working with it.
Mm. Nature is doing its thing.
Yeah.
We need to adapt. Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good
I think it's very interesting to see the difference between Judi, your work, and Jerri, your work, how you translated, sure, very different things, but the level of emotional interpretation, which is probably also why what Jerri was doing gets it out of it's just purely it's a graph, and it's not, you know, it's I think this is what art is going to do, is going to put the emotion into the data. But so, and now I'm going to be nosy, and Jane, I've seen you work, and while we were talking, and that is such a fiber artist thing to do.
Absolutely. And
it's talking and working at the same time.
Here's the funny thing about it. I just grabbed this piece because I'm trying to pick up some things. I have a very long car trip ahead of me starting Sunday, like 31 hours in the car. Well, with a couple of overnight stops, but you know, and not everything lends itself very well to sitting and stitching in a car during the parts that I'm not driving, obviously. So I was pulling out some things, and this is really a scrap kind of piece that started out, it's a very tattered vintage piece of linen, a napkin that I had used as a backing cloth when I was dyeing some things. And then I had pulled it out later because of that, what we were saying about like the sky during the fire season. And I had started painting a little bit over the remnants of the dye that were on this backing cloth. And then I started to add little bits of fabric onto it and then stitching. And I had at one time done a similar kind of piece where I came from someplace where we had some enormous floods a couple of years in a row. And I had done some with sort of these rising water levels, but this time I started stitching them in red. Because, and then had little, I don't think you can see it here, but there's little flecks of silver all through it too. from a little silver marker from the ash that I was so amazed by. And I hadn't even really thought about, I mean, I simply picked it up because I keep my hands busy on these calls. And I was thinking, oh, mostly I'm doing straight stitches at this point. I'm done with the painting part. Maybe I can take it in the car. But, you know, it really had a lot to do with thinking about the fires. I don't know if you can see that there's one large standing conifer still in the picture there. But most of it has gotten, you know, blotted out in other ways, and the stitches are rising.
So you mentioned a serendipitous thing. It's one of the English words I really know. So if I can bring it up, I will. So art has, as artists, you know that there's a lot of serendipity going on in your creation. How does that combine with science? Is science serendipitous as well? And how do these two relate?
That's a really good question. Because it seems in some ways that it would be kind of antithetical when you think, well, I really enjoyed Jill Pelto's talk, and I would respond to those paintings of hers if I knew nothing about what they were, but knowing they were depicting data, and she was talking about research your topic and find the data and how would you incorporate it. And I'm thinking, well, that makes a lot of sense. I have I spent my career as an academic, you know, I do like to acknowledge things like that. And yet, you know, something like this just kind of springs up. It's like, I don't know exactly what the data said, but I had a pretty strong feeling from listening to the lecture about, you know, I'm looking at the list actually about, you know, hope despite escalating fires, right? Or, you know, just understanding about this wasn't always a bad thing for the trees. It's a bad thing for us because we want to do things with our land that doesn't involve them being on fire. And we don't want the smoke in the sky. For the, you know, the actual trees, not necessarily. We've always had fire that managed forestation, right? It's that we want to be where we don't want the fire to be. So it's hard, you know, to think about how do you incorporate that.
I saw Dominique start to nod right away after I posed this question. So do you have a comment on it, Dominique?
So, you know, research is very serendipitous. You start along the line and then suddenly you discover something. I mean, scientists are very good at going into rabbit holes. You think you're going to be going in that direction and poof, you find something really interesting and you go that way. A lot of times, I mean, people have instruments and I've been measuring things, for example, and then a fire comes. Well, their research may not have been about fire at all, but now they have a plot that actually has, you know, some impact from fire. And then they had another plot close by that didn't get touched by the fire. So then they write a proposal right away and say, hey, I have these plots and I can actually do research on this. It happens all the time. Or you're working on river quality and, you know, you're looking at chemistry and then suddenly you meet Jerri who starts talking about parasites and you're like, oh, I've got data that, you know, could be joined with yours. And then we could do a project collaboratively. And poof, there you go. We go to meetings, and the best part of meetings is in the hallway when you talk to other people. They give you idea and you create collaborations that way. It's very serendipitous.
This is the hallway. This meeting is a hallway.
Yeah.